Okay, we're going to talk about intonation, tuning concepts, and basically things that affect pitch on the French horn. A lot of students and teachers alike will come and say, I don't know how to tune this instrument. There's a lot of equipment here. What do I do? Well, beyond learning the basic fingerings for the instrument, there are several things that will affect pitch on the French horn. The first one being alternate fingerings. That seems pretty logical. If you look at any basic fingering chart, you'll notice, especially if a student has a double horn, every note has at least 2 fingerings. Certain parts of the horn in the lower register only have one way to finger a note, but almost everything has just a very wide array of ways to finger. So alternate fingerings and different fingerings. So you want to spend a little time with your students talking about the most common or most standard or best and ideal ways to finger certain notes, and keeping in mind that there are going to be pitch variances in different fingering systems, different fingerings and ways to finger all the different notes. Another very seemingly obvious thing that will affect pitch on any brass instrument, in fact, any wind instrument, is the length of the instrument, more specifically tuning slides. We have a lot of tuning slides. And sometimes people see horns and they have horns in their band program, and even parents will bring horns and there will be so many slides, they have no idea what slides do what. So I'm going to give you a surefire way to figure out what any slide at any given time on the French horn, because there are so many, and this will work for any of the other brass instruments as well, to figure out what they do. I'm just going to pull out a slide. Here's one. Lay it here. And the best way to figure out what that slide does is to try to play the instrument without it. By doing so, I'm going to see what notes it affects. Well, that slide will affect those notes of the horn, so that's the tuning slide for that set of notes. First, I have a double horn. I'm going to play some notes without the trigger or the B-flat horn. Clearly, I cannot get a sound. Now I'm going to depress the trigger so that I'm using only the B-flat side of the horn. This slide, not on the horn, I can't play the F side of the horn, so clearly this is an F slide. Only affects the F fingerings, or the notes without trigger. Okay, let me pull another one out. Here's one. It looks just like the first one and is right next to it, but it has absolutely nothing to do that way with this one. They do different things. So once again, I'm going to try to play some notes with trigger and some notes without trigger. Okay, I tried to play F fingerings and B-flat fingerings, and I couldn't get anything to come out at all. So this must be my main tuning slide, or the slide that affects the entire instrument. If I went through the whole entire horn and pulled out every slide and tried all different degrees of combinations, eventually, after some time, I would figure out what all of my slides do. Most horn designs and horn models are wrapped and put together and designed differently. So it's very important to figure out where your tuning slides are and what all the slides do. You will not fail if you take the slide out and try to play the instrument. That's really the best and most efficient way for anybody to figure out what their slides do. Another important thing that will affect pitch that's specific to the French horn is the right hand. Now we've talked about posture, and keeping in mind that the right hand position is a very big part of posture for us, for the horn player, and where it is in the horn. I will play some notes and move my hand around on the bell, and you'll see how much difference there is in pitch just with the right hand alone. There's a good, probably quarter step in there of pitch difference just based on the right hand position alone. So it's very important to have the student learn good right hand position and then have a consistent right hand position so that they can focus on fingerings and slides and all the other things that we're going to talk about that affect pitch. This really should not affect pitch. It can, but we don't want it to, and negatively anyways. We want it to be in the right place all the time so that our pitch is consistent. So we've talked about valve combinations, we've talked about tuning slides, we've talked about right hand position. Another one that will affect all instruments, but I think is worthy to mention, is room temperature. Kids that are out on the marching band field, they're going to have to deal with really hot temperatures. They're going to play sharp. Likewise, if we're in a really hot room or the temperature is such that it's very warm, our instrument is going to go sharp as well. So it's important to know how to account for that on the horn and to use the slides to help counter the temperature. Conversely, really cold temperatures, our pitch is going to go flat. So room temperature is something important to note for intonation on a brass instrument. Finally, I would like to mention lead pipe angle. I think this is a real important one to affect intonation on the horn. And I'll demonstrate this for you because a lot of young players that are still developing embouchure and mouthpiece placement and good technique and good fundamentals here will use too much lip pressure. I think almost everyone has heard of brass players using too much pressure, especially in the high range. Well, this will affect pitch too. And using too much pressure on the upper lip actually makes the pitch go sharp. So if you have students that use way too much pressure and they're really pushing that horn on their face, big red ring on their upper lip, chances are they're playing sharp because the lead pipe angle is so high, their airflow into the horn is at such an angle that they're going to get a much higher pitch center. The oral cavity is more likely closed. We've talked about how that helps in the high range, but you have to watch that the pitch isn't going high. I'm going to play a note and move just the lead pipe angle, and I think you'll be able to hear how much difference there is in pitch and intonation just with that slight change. We all know that using too much upper lip pressure this way is a bad idea. Well, how do we know how far down we should be? One thing that I like to consider in where to put the horn in relationship as far as lead pipe angle, which affects pitch, which affects endurance, which affects tone, sound quality, and all that in turn is affected by how the student is sitting and posture, everything works together, is the ratio of pressure on the upper lip and the bottom lip. So if the student is, I usually tell my students, if anything hurts, it's probably not good. So if your upper lip is hurting from pressure, we need to look at your lead pipe angle. And you need to spend more time in the practice room so that your corners get strong. We need to make sure that lead pipe angle isn't too high. I'm focusing on a pretty good balance. Pretty much the same pressure on the upper lip as the bottom lip. Now in the extreme high register, yes, there is going to be a little bit more upper lip pressure because things are much tighter, much more centered, the airstream is very small. There's going to be some pressure just because I need to make sure that I have a really good seal of the mouthpiece on the mouth so that the air doesn't escape. And if I go too low, I simply lose the buzz altogether. So there has to be a seal of things. And in the low register, we might use a little bit more bottom lip pressure because we have that bigger aperture. So a good way to tell a student when they're searching for that balance is, look for a pretty even balance. Don't hurt anything. Work on your corners. Use good air. And see if your intonation is fairly consistent. But likewise, those 5 things are very important. Slides, tuning slides, alternate fingerings and fingerings, the room temperature, of course, the lead pipe angle, and the last one that we talked about was the right hand position. All those things are very important in dealing with intonation.